I know I was born for this. Don't care for the critics, my words are like physics, a force that they can't stop. They just don't get it, I think they forget I'm not done till I'm on top. I know I was born for this. I know I was born for this. I believe we can write our story.
Hello, everyone. Hafa Day. Welcome back to Words from the Wise. As you know, my name is Gary. If you don't know, my name is Gary Wise. I am the founder for Wise Leadership Solutions and the host of this podcast. Today, we have a guest that I'm just super excited about. This man, we served together on one of the best places on earth to ever serve in the armed forces in the United States of America. This is a beautiful island called Guam, right? We fought from Guam. We fighting for Guam. And today I've got retired Navy Captain, Mr. Jeffrey Grimes. Hey.
Hafa Day.
Hafa Day. So Hafa Day is like for those of you that don't know, Hafa Day is like the aloha almost for the Polynesian island. How you say it? Marianas
It's really just
Islands.
Guam and the CNMI, the Northern Marianas Islands.
The Marianas Islands. Is Marianas part of Macronesia, or is that micro, or is it something different? Micro? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely is a unique island chain, right? Yep. Definitely is a unique culture. Erica and I got the chance to meet Jeff and his family there when we served on Guam. And just, for the people that don't know, the island of Guam, which has been an American, I'd say, mainstay and or place of having American people on soil since the Spanish-American War, right? And unfortunately, after Pearl Harbor was hit, what was it, December 7th?
Well, it was the same day. It was just across the international date line, so same day.
Guam was attacked, right? Guam was attacked by the Japanese during World War II. And the Chamorro, the local people that were on the island, and the Americans that were there, all were Americans, to be honest, fought, and unfortunately they lost that battle, and they had to wait a couple of years living under Japanese occupation until they were liberated. General MacArthur and all of them coming back through the Pacific hard, World War II, taking back the Philippines, taking back Saipan, taking back Guam. But the thing about living on Guam, one thing I will tell you is, God, they love some America over there, right? They are very patriotic people. They definitely know they're living on the tip of the spear, and they're proud to be part of the South China Sea, the Western Pacific region, but they're also proud to be freaking Americans, right? And it's awesome to be talking to you, Jeff, from Guam, right? High-speed internet, right? Here we go.
Yeah. So I'm a different day than you, as you know, and then this is where America starts its day. So definitely a lot of patriotism. Definitely. It's the highest enlistment rate for the service. So the 0.45% of all Americans who enlist and serve in our country, there's about 6% here in Guam and the CNMI who do that. So extraordinarily high number, high patriotism. Fought in all our battles. So I'm glad to be here and call this my home.
Yeah, 100%. And the mantra that Jeff came up with for Naval Base Guam before I got there, and we're gonna get into this other stuff, but I want to hit on fighting from and fighting for Guam real quick, right? Because when I first got to Naval Base Guam, Jeff had already been in command for about I'd say a year to year and a half at that point, and he had really locked in on fighting for Guam and fighting from Guam, because if you didn't recognize how far away we were possibly from having some support, you didn't understand what was going on in the world. And so we had that mindset of we had to be prepared to fight for ourselves from where we were at. And what I love about that is, as a sailor, that's always how it is, right? You go out in that ocean and you go across the horizon, guess what, dude? You're fighting for your ship from your ship. There ain't no one coming out there to save you, right? And so it really connected with me. It made me feel like we were a land-based aircraft carrier. And there was times I felt like we were operating as such.
Yes.
With multiple entry points. So that was the mantra, and that's definitely, I know it's the way he lives his life still in his heart. And, and I I feel that same way every day, even just in the comfort of my own home in Ocala, Florida. I feel like every American, every person's got to be ready to do what they got to do to take care. Because the fight doesn't always mean it's an enemy, like a wartime foe. Look, you got these people in Texas right now fighting against the weather, right? And they are trying their best to come through it as a community, and you got to just fight, There's just, you don't quit.
Yeah, just over 2 years ago, Typhoon Mawar came through here and significant damage across the island. It was, and Gary, you remember the different typhoons that come through, and I think you were on the tail end of Boot, which came through, and then Dolphin, which hit up at Anderson Air Force Base to the north of the island. But Mawar, right through us all, the whole island, massive devastation. I didn't have water for 6 weeks.
That one rocked y'all. That one rocked. I was hearing the stories, and that was a tough one.
Yeah,
but again, as an island, you guys came together and figured it out. Right?
Yep. And that goes back to what you said. No one's coming for you out here. This is you're far away. You're closer to the Philippines than you are to the Hawaii is 7 hours away by flight. So everything's far, and you're in the middle of it all.
That's it. And for me, that mindset is the beginning of any sort of resilient conversation. Yeah. Right. In order for you to have any level of real resilience, you got to first have the mindset of I've got to take some responsibility for climbing my butt out of this hole and helping anybody to the right or left of me immediately, but not worrying about all of the things that are way beyond my control. Right. And then you would start to improve the conditions, and away you go, and you figure it out. So today, Jeff, man, I'm so thankful that you are here. I am excited to share your story with the world, for my students, for anybody who's watching this podcast. I believe you're an American hero. I really do. I got the chance to serve with you close up and through a bunch of dynamic things, right? And I'd go to war with you anytime. And so that for me, and I do not say that about everybody. I'm just going to be honest. Right.
Well, we went through a couple little wars when we were together, hopefully, luckily, not to the casualty level you would expect from a war, but we definitely went through some stuff. We'll talk about that, I'm sure.
Sure. Yeah, we'll get into it for sure. Let's get back to before you joined the service, did you come? I feel like you were from Kentucky. Were you from Kentucky?
Yeah.
Okay. So Kentucky, born and raised Kentucky?
Born and raised Louisville, Kentucky, a little place called Fern Creek in the southeastern side of Louisville. Lived in the same house my whole life. Fern Creek Elementary, Fern Creek High School. I mean, it was no middle schools and nothing back then. So that's where I was born and raised.
And when you were coming up as a kid, were you big into athletics?
Yeah, that was kind of, the thing I did. I definitely, my mom, my dad, everybody was very athletic. So I definitely played every sport I could, every chance I got, and helped me along the way, keep my discipline straight, keep me out of trouble, all those good things that come with it.
Okay, and I know that when you got into high school, I feel like you were wrestling, but did you play multiple sports in high school?
Yeah, I played football, wrestled, and then in the spring, I kind of bounced around between track and baseball. So I did play all three.
So coming through high school, Louisville, Kentucky, being an athlete, being a part of a team, I'm just curious, how did the Naval Academy hit your radar? Because that's not an easy place to go to school.
So I don't think we've ever talked about that. How it happened is I'm sophomore year. I'm finishing up. I'm thinking about, hey, what am I going to do next? And just happened that right across from the wrestling room at the high school is the ROTC. And it's Marine Corps ROTC at Fern Creek. And my coach said, hey, you need to, I wasn't from a well-to-do family. If I was going to go to college, I back then, it wasn't student loans and the things that got you through. You just figured. So the chances were I wasn't going to go to college and really wanted to. And sports wasn't necessarily the thing that was going to get me there, depending, right? You didn't know. It was a wild card. So the one thing that helped me is I joined the ROTC in my junior year. You're talking this was a Marine Corps ROTC. So my junior and senior year, I actually was in JROTC. And when that happened, the colonel at the time started talking to me about the military academies, because I actually had good grades. I was taking hard classes, had the athletic background too to help. And he started talking to me, and then I got interested. And so I applied, and it really was the decision to go into JROTC. They kind of said, hey, try to go. And I applied for other colleges too and got accepted to some, but that was the one that kind of kicked me over into this different thoughts thing that I never even knew about. I mean, no one in my family really was in the military.
Yeah, I did not know you were in JROTC for 2 years in high school. Hey, everybody, listen to that. There you go. And you can come in junior year. It's not too late, and you can still get opportunities, right?
It was challenging. I'm an athlete. I was pretty good, so I was known. It wasn't a big high school, but then I go into the JROTC, and the people who had been doing it for the years. Oh yeah, it was kind of embarrassing. I mean, they were ordering me around, and get on the rifle range, couldn't hit anything.
Yeah.
So it was humbling, and and then there was another level of discipline there that even in sports you don't get to, and that's kind of where I started going, I kind of like this military thing. Yeah. And so it opened the door. It opened my aperture to look broader than what I was, the traditional plan, which is go up the road, go to work and just work,
Right. So I trust me, I do know. I'm talking to these kids all the time, and they're trying to figure it out. And I've gotten kids. Last year we had somebody got the Air Force Academy. One of our cadets got University of Florida. She's going to be a nuclear engineer, ROTC. And I'm trying to get her to go submarines, right? Because I think she'd be awesome at it. And so I do know. And I see these kids trying to figure it out, and I tell them all the time, like, look, I didn't figure out a lot of life till I was about 25, 26, like, just being honest. So the military is kind of where I went to hibernate while I figured out who I really was in my life. And then just so happens I like the military, so why not keep going, Yeah. So you went to Annapolis, right?
Yes. I ended up at Annapolis, but I didn't go there directly.
No kidding. Okay.
No, I didn't go there. So the interesting kind of my trek to college from high school was really my senior year of learning, and I applied for Naval Academy, and I applied for what was called the Merchant Marine Academy. So that's a Department of Transportation academy, right? And I took a visit with my dad on a work trip, and Merchant Marine Academy is in Long Island, New York, and we went there, and he was doing business sales while I went with him, and I could not communicate in New York City, being from Kentucky.
Yeah.
To Dunkin' Donuts, and couldn't understand anything anybody was saying. I was so frustrated because I just didn't hear the talk that way. Right. So I got accepted to the Merchant Marine Academy, believe it or not. And at the same time, I got accepted to the Naval Academy Preparatory School. So my grades were good, but not quite good enough to go directly into the Naval Academy. So I had a choice to go directly to the Merchant Marine Academy or go to the Naval Academy Prep School. And so I thought about it, and I'm like, man, Annapolis, that's the real deal. Not anything against Kings Point or anything. But then I had my New York experience, which was kind of scary for me. So I went, hey, let me do this. Let me go to the Naval Academy Prep School. And in order to go there, you have to enlist. So I enlisted and went to Newport, Rhode Island in 1984 for the Naval Academy Prep School. It's a 1-year preparatory school. It was the hardest academic until my senior year at the Naval Academy. It was the hardest academic thing I've ever done. I mean, I had sports and everything else, but it was 4 to 6 classes every single day, Monday through Friday. Very intense. but it was well worth it. So I did that for a year.
I saw the Naps. Are they
Yeah.
are they midshipmen or are they called cadets at Naps? Or are they sailors?
You're not a midshipman yet. You're just a sailor.
You're a sailor. Okay.
Yeah.
So I when I went to the Senior Enlisted Academy, it's there on
Yeah.
Newport, and you saw the Naps sailors
Yeah.
all formed up, marching around like almost like great like basic training, right? And I remember thinking, what is this? You know, because for me, for a surface sailor, a surface guy, Newport is almost kind of like this mecca of like the SWO Navy, you know, and you got to go there and like pray to the gods of the surface Navy. And for the submarines, you got Groton right across the way or whatever else, you know.
Well, all the leadership schools. I've been back through Newport, Rhode Island, you know, when I was active duty, once every 4 or 5 years for leadership schools or other types of things that they do there. So even as a submariner, you know, I had to get back through there for some of the courses that they did.
Yeah, especially if, like the command pipeline, Navy leadership. What is it? Ethics and leadership.
Legal.
There. Yep.
Yeah, and Naval War College.
Naval War College is there. That's it. It's just I'm sure the people of Newport, Rhode Island are very ingrained into the Navy heritage, right? Because you got a lot of people there that have done years of watching sailors come in and grow and develop and grow a connection. And that's how it is at all these hubs, right, of our military, whether it's San Diego, whether it's Yokosuka, whether it's Guam. You just have these communities that have this affection for their branch, their bases, their people. And then a lot of us meet people, fall in love from those areas, possibly relocate. I mean, hey, I'm in Florida. I'm from Utah originally, right? Like, I met my wife in Florida, and I'm in Florida. That's how it goes. Okay, so academically challenging at NAPS. So when you get done with NAPS, do you go to a plebe year?
Yeah, so if you graduate from the 1-year school, then you basically get an automatic admission to the Naval Academy.
Okay.
So the story continues though, because I had a medical issue. So I graduated, I finished, but I had a medical issue that summer and I did not get inducted to the Naval Academy. So they sent me back to NAPS, but I got lucky, very lucky, because they could have discharged me.
Yeah.
But they allowed me, I won't say allowed me to go back to the Naval Academy Prep School. But I had already graduated the school. It's 1-year school. So I wasn't a student, I was on the staff. So there I was, an E3. I made seaman.
Okay.
And I actually worked on the staff of the Naval Academy. So I didn't live with the students. I lived in a separate dormitory. And I took like 2 classes that they offered that I didn't take the year before just because they wanted to keep me in the academic realm some way. And I coached football. And I coached wrestling. I couldn't really do too much because I had some physical issues there. But I got lucky. The Navy did a solid for me and held on to me 1 more year. So I went back to the Naval Academy Prep School, finished the year, got medically cleared, got healthy. And then in 1986, I went to the Naval Academy. Yes.
Right. And you got to climb the Herndon Monument and all that and do that whole thing?
I did. I was on the bottom of the pile. I didn't see anything.
Hey, it's definitely a tradition that I think is awesome. You know, as a person who just sees it happen every year, and I see it from the newsreels, I see it from, you know, whatever group is covering it at the time. I just think that's a bunch of Americans over there doing something hard for just because they have to do it, right? There's no other there's nothing. You got to do it, dude. Get up there, and that's it.
Yeah.
All right, yes, sir. Take the hill.
Yep. No, it was. You look back, you go, even that, take the monument, you go, what was, because you're, at that point, I'm 19, almost 20 years old, going, what the heck am I doing this for? But you got told to do it, you went and do it. You know what? It was exciting and well worth it, and it did everything it was supposed to do, which was the initial indoctrination into teamwork. It's not about an individual, although one individual pulled the cap off the top of the monument. He couldn't get there, and it was Kenny Grimes, believe it or not, for my year. he couldn't get there unless we were all being the foundation for that person to get to the top. So that was what it was about. Did I realize it probably then? Yeah, they told me, but I didn't really, I was just out there, but it was a lot of fun too.
No,
but that is the reason for doing that.
And I get it, right? I think sometimes being a team member is that simple, right?
Yeah.
It's just that simple. Don't worry about who's the one taking the hat off the statue. Play your position, man, and don't worry about it. So when you were at the Naval Academy, did you enjoy that experience?
Yes. In hindsight, definitely more so than actually. I will tell you the one thing about the prep school that is very beneficial is that I kind of knew, even though it's different, it had a lot of the similarities to what you were going to do at the Naval Academy. So the indoctrination was kind of like boot camp, when you do the boot camp, you become assimilated into the group. So NAPS allowed me to do that. Right. And therefore, when I was able to use my experiences, especially a two-time NAPSter, to help all the new people that came in who hadn't had that experience and just get them through the first year. The first year is very, very challenging because it's very restrictive. Not only do you have your college courses, you also have this book called The Reef Points that you basically have to memorize by the end of the year. And they quiz you on it constantly. If you want to eat lunch, you got to take a quiz, kind of thing. So that part, the camaraderie there, the knowledge and history of the Navy, the culture of the Naval Academy all comes out in that first year.
Right.
And then your second, so that's your plebe year, very, very challenging. And then your second year, you're kind of getting into the routine. That's the year you got to pick your major at the beginning, right before the beginning, because that's the course to settle in.
Coming out of Annapolis, did you know what you wanted to do as a naval officer?
So how it works is after your junior, right toward the end of your junior year, you'll go through your service selection, your community selection, but different if you're submarines. So in order to get brought into submarines, I had to go to interviews at naval reactors and be accepted into the submarine program. So when you do service selection night at the Naval Academy, I was already done because I had done my interviews, went to the naval reactors in Washington, D.C., and had been selected to go to submarines. So I knew I was going to submarines. Didn't know where, because there's a training pipeline after you graduate before you ever get your first submarine assignment. So, but I knew I was a submariner. I was going to be a Marine my whole time there. That was my plan. I was a mechanical engineering guy. And then I kind of looked at, hey, what's the long-term future? And I said, let me try this submarine thing out, and made a choice, and changed my mind and made a choice, and was lucky enough to get picked, and ended up being what I love to do. I'm not saying I wouldn't have loved being a Marine, but I really, really love being a submariner.
So hold on, just so I understand that correctly, your whole time through the Naval Academy, you were wearing a Marine uniform when it came to formal dress?
No, you wear the same as everybody else. You wear your midshipman uniform, but I was doing activities with different Marine things there, physical stuff, just saying, hey, this is kind of where I'm leaning to be. So you kind of fall into these different groups of mentors that you have, so that to make your source selection, later. So, and then in the summers you have the different, they let you, the Naval Academy, during the summer, you do something also, whether it's a cruise or a Marine Corps activity, something there. So you kind of learn and you get to make a choice. But it was later in my sophomore year when I said, nah, I'm gonna go for submarines. Okay. So kind of changed my mind there.
Okay, and then
you never had been on one either.
Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to get a midshipman cruise on a submarine, right? But I mean, I think there's so many aspects to the submarine force that I find interesting, having never been around the. Again, most I ever got around submariners was Yokosuka when I was in Seventh Fleet, and getting the
Yep.
chance to work with them and listen to them talk, right? And then and both my bosses, all my bosses were submariners, and then the fleet master was a submariner. So getting the chance to just be in the room and listening, and then coming to Naval Base Guam and getting the chance to see what it's like for the forward deployed submarines there
Yeah.
out of Guam and get to know those people in the community, right?
Yeah.
Very, 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 very interesting though. As to, I'm very interested, very supportive of them because God, they have a lot of pride in what they do. I got invited down to one of the boats one time to have lunch by one of the Cobbs, and that was such an awesome experience, right? To go down there and just get the chance to sit on their mess decks and see how they eat a meal, right?
Yeah.
That was an honor. So when you graduate Naval Academy, where do you go to nuclear power school? Are you going down to South Carolina?
So at the time, because I'm old, I went to nuclear power school in Orlando.
Oh, okay.
Orlando, Florida was still open, and went to nuclear power school for there. And then when you graduate, that's about 6 month course. And then you graduate and you go to prototype after that. And I went to Charleston, South Carolina. I was the second or third class to go through that prototype. So it was brand new back then. Now it's the major prototype for the submarines, but I was like the second or third class. There's only one boat there at the time, so it just got decommissioned. Matter of fact, I just saw it. The Sam Rayburn on one of the feeds got decommissioned finally for other ones that are there. Because the prototype was a submarine. It was a submarine didn't get underway. It was the engine room of the submarine, but we actually went onto the submarine and did the prototype, and that's where you learn. So the first year of graduation, when you go once you select submarines, is all about nuclear propulsion. So that's first 6 months in Orlando was heavy classroom, and then the next 6 months was actually classroom and operation. You actually operated in normal and in simulated casualties for the reactor to make sure you know what's going on before you go. Then after you finish prototypes, then you go to submarine warfare school and your junior officer course. So you go to your first basic course, and that's where you learn how to drive, to navigate and drive on the surface, submerged, all those things, and basics about the weapons employment system. So you do the front end of the boat. So all in all, it's about, after I graduated from the Naval Academy, I went to school for another year and a half, different types of schools. And then that's from that last submarine officer basic course is where you get your assignment to what submarine you're going to.
Okay. And for those of you that are listening to the sounds of our voices, one of the things I picked up from the submariners that I got to know is when they say the front end of the boat, that's like everything not propulsion. And when they say the back end of the boat, that's everything propulsion. So I will tell you, I never got to go past that one frame, that one door. They're like, nope, Gary, you can say this egg hanger stuff here, but you can't go any farther past. And I was like, hey, I was on a nuclear aircraft carrier. I had a TLD. They're like, we don't care. You're not going back there. So, but that context matters because of the front. Are you a front ender? Are you a back ender? They have this language that is part of that culture, right? That's part of that community. And I think that it matters. So how was it in Orlando when you were going to school? Were you living on base or did you have to get an apartment?
I actually had an apartment. Yeah. I lived out, and it was just fortunate for me as my Naval Academy roommate also was a submariner. So he and I lived together in Orlando, so I didn't have to worry about, getting to know someone new. I kind of knew the guy. We lived together for 3 years. So we lived in an apartment.
How was that going from up north to Orlando, Florida, young commissioned naval officers going to nuclear school? Did you have time to enjoy it?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Did you?
I mean,
good.
There's a lot of studying, but it wasn't full time. No, Orlando's great. I mean, because Orlando's a great town. I mean, back then, it was just happening everywhere around, and I mean now it's even more flourishing. But it was a good town back then.
Yeah, good Liberty, I'm sure. Good Liberty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Charleston was great too. Charleston, South Carolina is one of my, and I never made it back there again. But it's a great place. I mean, I really like Charleston. I was only there 6 months and I didn't get to do as much, but everything I remember about Charleston, I lived in a place called Goose Creek too, which is just outside of, it's not really in Charleston, but that's where the base is at. So it was a lot of fun. Good times.
I mean, here you are, this young man coming from Kentucky, joined the military out of high school, got through the NAPS process, got through the Naval Academy process. Now you're freaking going down one of the most rigorous academic, strategic, important pipelines of the United States Navy. And along the way, you're hitting, Orlando, and now you're going to South Carolina. Where's your first boat?
So where submarine officers basic course is in Groton. So that's the mecca of submarines. If you ever live in Groton, Connecticut. But I got my first boat out of Norfolk, Virginia.
Okay.
So I left. So yeah, your first 2 years, I moved 4 times, but I landed on my first submarine, USS Albany, out of Norfolk, Virginia. That's where I operated.
So USS Albany out of Norfolk, Virginia, and as a nuclear officer, I would imagine all officers on submarines are nuclear, right?
Yes. Everybody starts there.
So everybody's a nuke. That's different than this on the surface side. Surface side, you'll get this blending, right? But on a submarine, everyone's a nuke. So you guys all have that common DNA strand. And I remember watching the nukes on the carriers. They had to manage the academic maintenance of their warfare, their designators, as well as doing their jobs, right? It was, but I can imagine the COs, the XOs, and the department heads also played a role in taking care of the junior officers, making sure they didn't fall aside. So, do you remember what your first job was as a first tour Divo?
I was the reactor controls assistant. That was my first division officer job, RCA. And then, so you always start your division officer jobs are in the engineering department. At first, there's a few toward the end that you may end up being a division officer forward if they have them, but your focus is engineering. And so I did reactor controls assistant, which that is the kind of anything to do to start up, shut down, and control the reactor, because there's reactor controls assistant, there's the electrical assistant, so you do the electrical piece. There's the person in charge of the chemistry and all of the radiation surveys, so you have those. And then you have the mechanical division. Those are the 4 divisions in the engineering. And then there's one forward auxiliary division officer called the damage control assistant. And that's what ended up being most of my time was the DCA. So I did RCA, then I was the DCA, the damage control assistant. So I did a lot of my division officer on the forward side of the boat, as you say. So that falls in your category.
100%. Damage control is my thing. But you guys, they had that inline air breathing capability where they could plug out of air and plug in air. And I always thought that was got to be complicated, trying to figure out how to fight a fire. I guess SCBAs are a thing on there, or no?
You do, but they're only for the designated for quick reaction. You put on the emergency air because there's no clean air. You're in a tube, right? It's totally contained. So everybody has to put it on the emergency air breathing device, and then and you do. But if you want to quick react, because it takes you time to load up with an SCBA. So everybody needs to be able to do that for one, to save their life, but more also to emergency respond until you are relieved by the people with the SCBAs. So you have to learn how to go from the all the way traverse the ship with plugging in, take your breaths, move to the next location, and then hopefully there's four there that you plug in. Hopefully there's one left, or you got to find a buddy and plug into him, and you end up in a daisy chain and you're all plugged together and no one's plugged into the supply. Yeah, those things happen. It's pretty fun.
I believe it.
You learn.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I much respect, but I know the challenges of being the damage control person on a surface ship. I can only imagine trying to train the crew all these fundamental. But I would also imagine you get a lot of help from everybody because everyone knows that they have to know these things.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about a submarine is we're everybody is a damage controlman. Everyone. Yeah. If you were there, officer, enlisted, if you were there when the fire breaks out, you are the primary responder until relieved. And that's because of the environment in which you live in. You can't go topside. You are underwater. You have to save the ship to save everybody. So that is a big difference. And we're all heavily trained in those types of, whether it's flooding or fire or anything else, everybody is trained. That's really the thing when you get your dolphins, that's really what it's about. Yeah. Is you know the systems throughout the ship and how they interrelate, and where the critical places are so that you can save the ship. That's really what it's about. That's really what the dolphins are about.
I will tell you, I love our Navy for a lot of things, and there's some areas that I was frustrated, but I believe the submarine force is just going to lead the Navy out of the quagmire if people will put away all their petty prides and we'll lock in on some of these fundamentals, right? Because I'll tell you, the surface Navy, it's just all over the place. But I know in my heart that what you just said is what the spirit of everyone has got to have. And it's not just in the military either. I have that same synergy with my team at my high school, right? Mm-hmm. Like when my cadets promote to chief petty officer now in my unit, I tell them, I don't need you to memorize everything in those books. I need you to know how to be a good chief petty officer in this unit and do the things that the commander wants you to do and that I want you to do, because we can always go look all that other stuff up. But if there's an emergency situation, I need to be able to trust that you can handle that enough until you can get to leadership and give us an opportunity to help you out. So control the chaos until the people that are making sure that we're all safe can get us there. So I feel all that. Everything you just said is still spot on. So coming through your first tour, coming from reactor controls, coming to damage control, do you go after? Is that a 2-year tour or is that a 3-year tour on your first?
So
tour?
it's average of 36. I did 40 months on my first boat. That's because I deployed 3 times on her. So she was brand new ship, and we deployed quite a bit.
Okay.
Because she just was brand new at what we could do. So I ended up doing 40 months. I actually transferred on the last deployment out of France to come to go to my next assignment.
How did you like Virginia?
Oh, Norfolk, Virginia was great. I lived in Virginia Beach at the time, and even though you drove, and I ended up in Virginia a lot of my career, Norfolk area. So Hampton Roads is great. It's a little bit of traffic you got to fight through there with the bridges and everything, but you are in the central of everything on the 95 hub. You can go east, west, north, south. And overall, just Hampton Roads area is great. There's always things to do, and
it really is. I lived in Virginia. We lived in Virginia Beach as well, right down there by the amphitheater, right off Dam Neck Road. And, it was great for Erica and the kids because they never had to go to Norfolk. And nothing against Norfolk, but I liked the slower of the beach side, right? And then I always thought I was going to go back there and get a job on Little Creek and enjoy being on Virginia Beach side, but didn't work out, but it's fine. You left that first boat and you did 40 months, got all that experience. Did you then after that go back to school again, or do you go right to another ship?
I didn't. I you go to your shore tour. And so I went to Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, and I was for Commander Submarine Forces Pacific. I was a command center watch officer. So they actually run an ops station there. So I ran that, but I also was the shore targeting terminal officer. So I did Tomahawk level stuff. But when you say go back to school, I went to night school. So I went and got my master's at Chaminade University at night. So worked all day and then did my nighttime. Most nights of the week, I went to college and got my master's in business administration from Chaminade. So that was my short one.
So did I understand that it was SubPac?
Submarine Forces Pacific, SubPac, yep.
Submarine Forces Pacific, you're a watch stander on the watch floor, you're doing some tomahawk stuff, and then you elected, instead of waiting till you go to the War College or wherever they go in Monterey someday to get your master's, you chose to pull it left and do it early during night duty.
Yeah,
did you pay for that yourself?
Well, because you go to that 18 months of school prior to getting to your first boat, it's very hard in your career pipeline to get Monterey or something like that and stay on track. You can do it. There's people who do it. But it is a little bit more difficult for us. So I chose it. You need your master's. And at that time, I wasn't for sure what I was going to do, if I was staying in or getting out. Wasn't quite sure. And so I went and got my master's, because either way, it's helpful to whichever path I chose.
Definitely.
And tuition assistance. The Navy paid for it.
Good. I was going to ask you about that. How did you get that? Okay. So the Navy paid for it. And at that time, you've been in the Navy about 5 years, 6 years by the end of SubPac, active duty side after school. So you're coming out of Submarine Forces Pacific, a lieutenant?
Lieutenant. Mm-hmm.
Are you already a dad at that point?
I'm a dad, and because I got married at my first tour.
Okay.
Had 2 kids already.
Okay. So
yeah.
How was that coming off of that tour as a dad? Because it sounds like it's a busy tour. I mean, it's supposed to be Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. It's supposed to be shore duty, but it sounds like, knowing you, that's a grind, right? And I know I got my education on shore duty and the ships. I got it. It's a grind. How was that for you? Was everything going okay? Were you balancing well, or was it a struggle?
Yeah, it's always, it was challenging. It wasn't a struggle, but it was challenging, and you just have to manage as best you can on stuff. Sometimes I'd get up early before everybody got up and did my studying, or wait till everybody's in bed to do my studying, or whatever I needed to do. Bought a few weekends here and there, but overall, you just balance out the best you can, and you need a supportive wife and family to help you get through it. Because without it, you can't do it. So,
what was it like back then? Because there was no internet, right?
This was the advent. Oh man, it's bringing back some memories. This was the advent of AOL.
Okay, so you had dial-up.
Yeah, and that old sound, you dial up and get the sound. So there was some of that. So, but most of it, I had to go. You had to go to the class. You had to go to the library. But there was some dial up. Now that you say it, I remember doing it. It wasn't much.
But there was a physical school in Hawaii that you were going to for your master's.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, in Honolulu.
That's a whole different game changer, because all of my education, I had internet for the most part, and I was able to just, get online like this and talk to people and get it done.
It was still books, and very limited. Even at the Naval Academy, we were the first class to be issued a computer, and it was a big desktop computer. But we didn't do a whole lot on it because there was no connectivity. It wasn't internet. It was a standalone desktop that you would have to build programs into, and then take a floppy disk with you to class to turn it in.
Man, I still remember when the Navy said we couldn't plug our USB flash drives into the computers anymore. Oh, man. I was at the Float Training Group San Diego, and I thought my life was over. What? How do I do my job?
Now I'm feeling really old.
Okay, so you're leaving SubPac as a full lieutenant. You and your family just did a couple of years there in Pearl Harbor, and it sounds like you're probably going back to Virginia.
Nope. This is the one-off. I go to Groton, Connecticut, and I become the weapons officer, the combat systems officer, short-named WEPS, on the USS San Juan. So my department head tour was out of Groton, Connecticut. So East Coast, back to the East Coast, same type of boat, was a Los Angeles class improved, just like the first one. That tour, you stay that position, that department head position the whole time, which is another 36 months, which I did about 32 on that. So that was San Juan.
When you look back on those two first ships as a young, first as a Divo, first tour, second tour, however you want to look at that, and then going back as the Weps, what was it like working with your enlisted counterparts or the people, the sailors that worked for you? Were they what you expected from them when you got there, or was it? So
my first tour, I had no expectation, but the most I've taken with me from my career out each individual tour was my first tour. The things you learn, the standards that have to be there, that was all taught to me then. And so I learned something from every tour, don't get me wrong, but the first one is the most impactful. And there's numerous ones, but I think I've told you this before, Gary, is the one I carry with me today, as much as I can, is what my chief told me when I became the damage control assistant. And my chief told me I had been working hard on something, but not doing a very good job at it. And it got sent back for me to do again. I was kind of frustrated. He then called me aside and he goes, "Hey, LT, here's the deal. If your standards are higher than your boss's, you work for yourself." And I carry that with me. And I learned that on my first tour. I carry that with me all the time. And it served me well. And there's many, many other instances, but that's the pivot of my understanding of how to be a submariner was that.
Yeah, I carry that with me now as well, too. My students that are going to hear you say that are going to say, "Oh, he's the guy," because I'm always telling them.
I didn't say it.
I say it all the time because I remember the first time you ever told me that story, that saying. I was just like, you just explained who I am to me without me even knowing it, because that's just, and now I know it's an entrepreneur, right? Like you learn to become essentially an entrepreneur inside of an organization, and you take ownership, right? As much as you possibly can. And what I love about those people is, because they might make mistakes because they're going to shoot for the sky, right? They're going to go really high, but they're authentically trying. I love those people for that right there. I can deal with people that are really trying. Okay, so that good that right there is a nugget. I love it. I use it all the time. It is such a good thing. So now you're at Weps. How was that tour as far as the deployments go? Did you get to do any fun Liberty ports, or did you get to do anything where you felt like, all right, I know what the heck's going on around me. I'm not learning all the things like the Navy stuff. I'm a department head. Like, did you guys get to do any fun things like punch a hole in the North Pole and get out and throw some snowballs at each other or anything like that?
Yeah, I did actually. I surfaced under the ice, saw a polar bear walking, or surfaced through the ice, saw the polar bear off in the far. We had, we surfaced in what's called a palenia, actually. It wasn't through the ice. You find an open space in the ice. You got to drive around and find it, and then you surface it out. We were one of the first 688 eyes up there to kind of do the proof on the surfacing procedure, because you actually you don't drive to the surface. You just float to the surface straight up. Right. So it takes a little bit of skill to do that. Cool. And so definitely on the first tours was Northern and a lot of Norway and Vaseline, Scotland. Pretty much that was the first tour. The second tour, which on my department head, I was in the Mediterranean most of the time. Italy, Naples. There was a little thing called Bosnia-Herzegovina going on that we had to prepare for and do some work for. So that was happening. So yeah, I've been through this, through the straits there a couple times, and that was my Atlantic, operations for that part of my career.
Awesome. I just think it's so different, such a different dynamic with the submarine force, because most people have no idea where they're going, what they're doing. They are the silent service for a reason, and I know that just you do these unique things, like come up on the North Pole, right? Like a buddy of mine was an FT, and he was telling me about how they went out there and they surfaced, and they went out there on the ice. And I saw a meme the other day of a feather in the water, so it was a periscope, right? And one of the former Master Chief Petty officers of the Navy comments on there. He's Rick West, right? He comments. He says, "Oh, eyeball Liberty, eyeball Liberty," and I was like, "Oh, I can imagine." There's a bunch of submariners looking through the periscope, like, "Oh my God, it must be nice to be over there right now."
Yeah,
eyeball Liberty. And then he said, "Don't worry, I don't think they saw us." And again, coming from the surface Navy, where the captain always would promise the watchstander a special perk if they ever saw a periscope, right? Because there was this thing where they're try not to be seen, trying to see. And I just think it's such an interesting culture and such an interesting perspective in naval operations, right?
Yeah.
In the operations of the United States Navy, when I look at the things like it just went down recently in history, and I can imagine what those submariners were thinking when they were going kinetic, right? And they were just, and it's just awesome stuff. Okay, so coming off of your WEPS tour, I would imagine you finished that tour as an 04?
Just about.
Just about.
Not quite. I was selected. But
okay,
yeah,
so
I was going to be able to
04, Groton, Connecticut. You've already got your master's degree out the way. And are you all the way in right now? Like I'm staying Navy forever? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, at that time you're 10 years in, almost 10 years in. So that was my career.
And did you know you wanted to be in command?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
That was the goal, right? So I finished that tour, and you have to get through certain exams along the way. One is get your command qual done. There's certain definitely milestones you have to achieve, and I had made that achievement to go there. So that was the focus. Not selected, but that was the plan.
I mean, I would imagine coming off that tour, you have to already kind of start voicing your, hey, I want to be potentially considered for command someday.
Yeah.
So after that tour, is that when you go back down to the Hampton Roads area? No,
not quite. I'm gonna get there. I went to I went to Millington, Tennessee, as the department head. Yeah, I was a detailer. So that's where you do IS9. So I went to Millington, Tennessee. Now that was 2 years. Now that was a lot of fun. I got my JPME, an online course. I did that. That was online, so I was into the internet age by that time.
Okay.
But Memphis and Millington is just north of Memphis. Beautiful, excellent place. Great.
Beale Street.
Great food, great culture, great history. But yeah, so that was kind of definitely a payback tour. It wasn't a hard job. It was work, but not hard. And my extra work was, just like I said, the JPMA, nothing much. So I got a lot of time to do the things with the family there.
Awesome. I think Millington is one of those. Again, you go to Millington, and it's just a community built around a Navy base, right? Like it's a whole town, a village built around a Navy base, and they know personnel management, right? They know about the bean counting when it comes to what it takes to fully staff and man an organization like ours, or like our old one, right? Okay, so coming out of Millington, are you able to almost pick your own orders coming out of there? Or?
No. The truth is, Naval Reactors picks all submarine orders, but I definitely had some influence. Even though I did the assignments, I had to get improvement. Even my department heads, they were approved ahead. I just picked and gave rationale on why. But yeah, this was so. They get the pick, and so from there, that's when I got told I was going to be the XO on the Tennessee Gold out of Kings Bay, Georgia. So my first strategic missile boat as executive officer.
Okay, so that those are kind of like the boomers, right? Those
That's
are the
the boomer.
boomers.
Ohio
So,
class, that's the boomer, strategic missiles.
so were your first two boats fast attacks?
Yeah, first two are Los Angeles class. They improved fast attack 688Is, and then my XO and CO tours were both on a ballistic missile load.
Okay. Um, how was that being XO of a rotating crew?
Wow, that's was challenging. I mean, the crew, um, they have a culture that comes together inside the ship. So when you change the inside of the ship out, the crew outside of that ship, then you go back, put another one in there. That culture. So where you put stuff, how you do things, it's the crew that does that. So there is a little bit of a transition each time. And although the standards are the same, the how you do the things is different. So
Right.
Challenging, but the good thing is unlike the 688, and the responsibility you have for a ship that has a reactor and weapons and everything on it, you as a member of that crew on those 688s, it's with you all the time. When the boomer crew, when they had a crew, we were in shore, and I was in a building, we were training, so you operate just as hard, but your time ashore isn't as stressful,
Right.
because the other crew has it. So it is a little bit different. There's some good things to that. The transitions are tough because they happen a lot as compared if you own the boat all the time. But at the same time, you don't own the boat all the time. So
Right.
there's a little bit of a mixed world there.
Yeah, those are like the 4 months on, 4 months off kind of rotation.
In general, yeah, 4 on, 4 off.
Yeah. I remember my buddy that was DFP.
I'm sorry.
We recruited together, and he was in Kings Bay on the boomers, and he did that because his mind, it was better quality of life for him and his family because he get to be home theoretically,
Yeah.
a little bit more. But I think when they're underway for that 4 months, they're like underway. Like they're not hitting ports and all that other stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing. There was no ports. I got Kings Bay and Kings Bay, and a couple times into Space Coast.
Down south over there. Okay.
Yeah,
I know
a couple times in there, which mainly we were there for an exercise. So, and then they quit. Then things happened, 9/11 and stuff. We didn't do that anymore either. But yeah.
I tell you didn't miss a whole lot. I will tell you, some of those nights before pulling into a Liberty port as CMC and CO, we would be up all night pulling our hair out with Liberty plans and all these request shit. Who's sleeping? Oh my God, it was almost easier when they said you're not going nowhere. Okay, fine.
In some respects, you're right. Even on a sub, I mean, you like those port calls, but boy, getting in a port and then just to shut everything down and get it ready for a different operation in port, and then getting it ready to get back underway. Those are not easy things to do. Those are hard tasks. In between's nice when you're on the Liberty, but the front end and the back end is super challenging, and so you got to take the good with the bad, as always.
It was fun. The more senior I got, the less I went on Liberty, and the more I enjoyed being on the boat, fully ready to do whatever I had to do to take care of the problem. Everybody, hey, Master Chief, you want to go on Liberty? I was like, no, I don't. I'm going to go down to the Chief's mess and wait for y'all to get back and hope that we don't lose anybody in this dang port because someone's going to do something stupid, But no, But I also remember being when I was in 7th Fleet and being in the room and saying, hey, where are these guys going to go on Liberty once in a while? Because we're planning out their next 15 months, their next 24 months, and nowhere are we even putting flags in the pole in the sand for Liberty calls. And for an 18 to 22-year-old, part of why they're joining to serve their country is to go see the freaking world, man.
I mean, it is. It's important. And not only just to see the world, but to understand the world that you're out there, interacting with, and potentially in a hazardous way, but hopefully in a peaceful way.
Yeah.
So you got to understand that it's way bigger than Fern Creek. or anywhere else you
100%.
came from. And there's different ways to
100%.
think, different ways to interact, different ways, commerce, you name it, different governments. And you see it when you get out. Even though you're a tourist of sorts, you're a visitor. As you know, we're always, as they tell the sailors, we're ambassadors for the United States every time you step ashore. So you learn all those things, which you take back with you, and it helps you understand the mission better because you've seen it.
Definitely. I think the other thing for me, I always took back as well how far-reaching our culture really was, the American culture. Because when you get there, they got Coca-Cola and Pepsi and the music they're listening to, and there's a lot of differences, but there's still a representation of who we are, and I always was proud of that, as an American. Okay, so you're on that ship now as an XO.
Yep.
How hard was it at being an XO?
So, executive officer is an interesting position. One, you're second in command. That's really, for a submarine, that's the most important.
Okay.
But you're second in command. You're not in command. So the captain's is everything. His culture, his philosophies is what you execute, and you have to do that with whether you believe it or not, with a straight face and with all the commitment that is required to do that. And then, unfortunately, the XO is also the administrative guy that everything comes through. So you got that piece of you. So it's an interesting tie of the operations to the administrative. But it's a part of the step along the process. You start feeling the weight of command, because it's a different weight that you have when you actually do take it, and you need to understand a little bit of it before you put yourself and put those boots on. So that's how I kind of that's my memory of what it was to be an executive officer.
Okay, so
definitely a lot of time. It was a challenging job.
A lot of time. Did you have the relationship with your CO that you hope to have? Do you remember?
I did, actually. I've heard stories. You probably have too, about different relationships and different experiences with commanders. Unfortunately, whether it was a department head when I was junior, or my XOs when I was a department head, or the XOs with my COs, I never felt any of that, never saw any of that. It was, it wasn't always perfect, but it was definitely not some of the experiences I've heard. It was all very positive. It was all good training, good experience, good development.
I think, and as the Master Chief, I'll tell you, as a Master Chief, that's one of my priorities is helping, because I would get, at least for the surface Navy, I would get these first XOCO fleet up, at least at my level.
Yeah.
And I did not want this person to get soured on their XO tour that would not only become my future commanding officer, but also could be a future commanding officer in other places. But XO could be a tough, thankless job, man. It could just be, it could be tough.
I think the other piece that you and I have talked about many times is that this was my first experience with the triad, right? The CO, XO, and on a submarine, the command master chief is called the chief of the boat. Your first one, that's those three people getting in a room and handling some very, very tough issues, discussing it out, where we, all three of us didn't always agree. Sometimes it was three different opinions. And when you walk out the room, it's the captains that goes forward, but you had a voice, and you had, and you were able to talk it out, and you're able to get the other perspectives, because that weight of that command is on the captain, but also on the cop, the chief of the boat, because he's got to carry it to the chief's quarters, who carries it down to every enlisted person. So that was probably the most beneficial, or the most powerful of being an executive officer, was understanding the triad and how it all worked. Because you didn't get a glimpse of that, but I didn't get a glimpse of that beforehand.
Yeah, good. I mean, it's powerful stuff, but I definitely agree with you. I understand the challenges, but it's hard to prepare for it until you're actually in the seat as the XO, as the COB, as the MASH chief, as the CO. People will tell me, "Oh, I filled in for so and so." Okay, it's it's not, filling in is not the same thing, bud. Like,
Yeah.
so you finish your XO tour. I'm sure that went great. Did you know coming out of that XO tour, like, did you get some downtime after that before you got notified where you're going to go and be in command?
I had to go to my next tour, and I was Commander's Advisory Group for a command called Joint Forces Command. It was a combatant command back in the day. It's no longer a combatant command. So I worked for a 4-star submarine group. That's who hired me. And then he got picked up to be the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So I ended up working for a 4-star Air Force commander. And I was what Command Advisory Group. So it was 3 of us in there. And
that's good ideas, right?
And we're just keeping his busy schedule going, because there's no way they can bring in that much data, that much knowledge. So you had a group of people who dug deep into the issues, provided up, try to, in a short, concise way, the issues, the limitations, the challenges, and the solutions. You try to package those up so when he did engagements. And in this case, the Joint Forces Command also had a NATO hat. So I had to do it for both NATO and for U.S. forces. And that's the trip that ended up taking me. I went to several NATO DEFMIN conferences, and then also ended up in Iraq and Afghanistan from on that tour to support my boss for about 6 months of those. So not what I expected when I took off when I got there, but I was away from home quite a bit on that tour.
Well, but if you also look back at those years, though, it was just a busy time for our military, right? I mean, those years were we were humping, you know.
And that was Norfolk, so that got me back to Norfolk. That was my next my venture back into Norfolk.
I will tell you, now that I've been retired and been out here to the civilian sector, there is a difference between those of us that served, you know, from 97 till 2022 was my years. If you were around for the whole global war on terror, the Iraqi campaign, all that stuff, that experience is just different than any other timeline, right? And so, and then of course within that experience, there's all the different experiences from the guys that were on the ground running and gunning, and the guys that were on the boats, but looking back on it was some of my favorite times too, though, right? I loved being operational and like knowing the things that we were doing were directly in line with executing this mission, right? I mean, when I was on USS Ogden, we went months with no contact with anybody else because we were just doing all kinds of fun things that we were just snatching people and shit. Not we as us, because we had embarked special forces that were doing. First time I ever saw a submarine ever in real world, and like honestly, it was in the western, somewhere in the ocean.
Yeah.
And there's DC freaking 2Ys out there just minding my own business, and a submarine just boom shot. What the hell? And I had no clue. No one's telling me what's going on. And we got a bunch of guys off that boat that looked like a bunch of freaking people that needed showers and shaves, and they came on board our boat, and we went and did other things. And I was just thinking, like, it's how once I got older and I got more experience to see how much really goes into using all these forces that I really became super impressed with how hard, how strategic, how challenging it all can be, right?
No,
and,
it is.
It really is. And oh, by the way, we were doing real world things, right? Like even though I was just a DC man hydrostatically testing fire hoses on the flight deck, right? My ship was directly in support of combat operations. And we were a staging deck for all kinds of other things. And that whole year from 2003 till probably about 2013, it just stayed pretty busy. You know, just stayed pretty busy. Okay, so you're at the Joint Force. Is that that's not your last staff duty, right? But that's your last flag staff duty. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
I mean, in a way.
I mean, in the future, you're going to have the future flag or your future job in Guam, right? But I would say working for this 4-star, you were at SubPac as a 3-star, I think it is, right?
Yeah.
So what do you do you think that staff duty? Do you think we're getting it wrong somewhere when it comes to staff duty? Because I'll be honest with you, I think it's just a freaking clown show sometimes. Just so much crap going on, and it needs to be, I think, watered down and just simplified. It's crazy.
Well, I mean, it's been, you know, you and I talked about this before too. Is, you know, what do we do that's directly related to the mission that you're trying to accomplish, right? And if you're not doing it to the mission, then you shouldn't be doing it. And part of that rebranding of Naval Base Guam was for that reason, right? Where you're not just when you're in Guam, especially when you're in the weapons engagement zone of the primary threat, you need to understand that, and it's not day-to-day operations. It's not. I mean, that you're going to do day-to-day operations, but your focus is preparing yourself for you know what the military is there for. It's the major deterrent to prevent war. But if it happens, you got to win. Right. So that's where staff duty, when you look at it, you got to try to boil it down, and at some cases it's hard to see. Like you mentioned, hey, you're doing the hydrostatic testing of a hose, right? How's that placing? Well, it's very important. There is some staff work that is supportive, but there's a lot that's not, and that's what we continually have to fight through. Is hey, is this related to the mission or not? And why are we doing it? So
yeah, but my heart goes out to those people that do just back to back staff duties, and they don't ever get the chance to get back down there and actually do the thing, right? Do the work that is where the heartbeat is of our force, right? I do feel for those flag officers, the flag riders, the people that are always stuck in staff duties, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. Because I did not have I did not enjoy it. I was so happy to go to Guam and to be a base master chief and to like get out of there, because I just felt like nobody needed me. Everybody was just like super smart, super. I don't know. I didn't feel like all the PowerPoints was very much fun.
Well, I think that's been most of my, you know, here at Guam, you can't ever think like that, right? Yeah. That's why even my current job is related to that kind of philosophy, right? You can't think about, you know, it's not just staff work to keep the cog running. You're out here actually trying to do something. Even though I'm on a staff, you're in the weapons engagement zone, and that always comes back to me.
But I know the one thing about you is you'll never forget where you come from. You'll never forget the reality, and then get stuck talking about all of the other things. Anyway, I digress, right? I was just curious, because I feel a lot of synergy in our upper level leadership, and I think they're all probably looking at each other saying, what are we really doing here? And how can we peel away some of this stuff to make it a little more streamlined and to focus on the things that really matter. The things that I know, the things that you remember how I never wanted to be a party planner when I became a command master chief, right? Like, I spent so much time planning freaking parties, and I was like, I would much rather go out and make sure everyone could PT. I would much rather go out, But anyway, again, I digress. I was curious because you had that experience of those, because 4-star, 3-star, those are different levels of staff than like maybe a 1-star staff, right? It's just different levels of things. Okay, so you go to that joint staff, you do a bunch of travel, and now you get to be in command.
Yeah, and then I go back to Kings Bay, and I'm the commanding officer of the Maryland Gold.
Man.
Back to sea, that's where you want to be. I'm
sure you're probably happy they'll be back on a boat, not to be doing all that other stuff you were doing.
I mean, the submarine, I'd go back, and I told you this before, I'd go back to the submarine now. I just physically probably can't do it like I could back then, because it's, you got to have physical capabilities and keep your mental acuity right, because it's a mental game, but your physical supports it. And as you get older, it's harder to move around on those things.
It is. So. And all those, I remember the sailors that asked me how I could do so well on the ship, and I said, man, this is like breathing to me. I've been doing this for so long. My favorite thing about the ship was everything was on the boat, forward, aft, port to starboard, high to low. Everything was where I needed it. I didn't have to go anywhere, and I was probably annoyed if I had to because I need to be on my boat. I need to be on my ship doing stuff for a ship.
Yeah.
Okay, so how much fun was being in command your first time?
Oh, it's everything that it ever was cracked up to be. But I was lucky because, and you'll probably hear a lot of commanders say this, but I had a great crew. I mean, it wasn't that I didn't come into, oh my gosh, the boat's broke, whatever. I came into a great situation and was only allowed to just take it, keep pushing it to the next level. And we did very well, won a couple battles. But it was really the crew that I had a good group of people who were focused and motivated on doing their thing, and they were great professionals. So yeah, it was a great time.
Awesome. I will tell you, it's for my COs, I always wanted them to enjoy their being in command, because when it's over, it's over. Right? When it's over, it's over. And I'd always try to reframe it for them, because we'd be going through some crap time and it would just be so horrible. And I would just be like, sir, but pretty soon you're not going to be doing this anymore. And I don't want you to, we're not going to remember that part too much. And I tell this to my high school kids, because I've got COs and XOs and all that. And I tell them, hey, you worked 3 years for this 1 year. Right. Mm-hmm. And by the way, this 1 year is really a give back year, because it's not about you anymore. It's about those 3 other previous grades coming up underneath you. So I know you're the CO, the XO, and the MASH chief, and the ops, and the whatever, but I don't care. Take care of those junior cadets and make sure that they're all looked after, and then enjoy the ride. Enjoy the ride, because at the end of the year, when I play that video on the screen and you're all given your trophies, it's over. And then the band plays and you go somewhere else, right?
I think you said it. It's in that position. It's not about you. It can't be about you. And it's about everybody else. It's about the most junior person to the chief of the boat that's with you. It's about them and how they do it, because your success is irrelevant to the boat's success, and that's really the key. It's the success of the ship. And so that's where I try to focus in on, is how do I make the ship successful? Well, that means every individual that's on that ship has to be successful. And and that's what you fight through.
That's it. So was your boomer in Kings Bay that you were in command?
Yeah, so I was back in Kings Bay on that.
Okay, so you know the waterfront, the people.
Yep. Knew the boat, knew the is very simple, same type of mission. So it was beneficial to go from the XO and then become the CO of that mission, because it's different than a fast attack. A lot of different things in there that you have to do. But so that it was, wasn't my first choice, but it ended up being the best choice made for me.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the challenges of being on those leadership troughs, right? You've got a bunch of people that got good ideas about where you should go. And to be told, that's one of the reasons why I said I'm just going to retire, because I got tired of everybody else having ideas about where I should go and nobody calling me up about it, Hey, guess what? Gary's going to Florida.
Yeah.
I'm taking my ball and going home, bud. But you could be great. I know, but I'd be great in Florida too, bro. I promise. It'll be okay. But at that moment, you're all in, and you're all right, boss. We're gonna do great things. Was it after that tour that you got that leadership award?
It was during that tour.
And so
the Stockdale Award is for the 05 Command.
Awesome.
05 C Command. So yeah, I won the James B. Stockdale Award.
Awesome.
I was in command.
And I'm sure everybody in your crew is super proud of that accomplishment, because there's no way any person can win that, like you said, without the whole team pulling. Everybody's rowing. So after that tour, so you're wrapping up command, 05 Command.
Yep.
Right, which that's crazy. That's an 05 Command.
That's an 05 Command. Most powerful warship, third most powerful country in the world.
That's
pretty heavy.
Wow. I mean, even the cruisers in 06 Command,
Originally, they were the ballistic missile boats were 06 Commands, and then in history 05 Command.
Okay. Hey, I got
Yeah.
it. Whatever. I'm sure they're doing just fine. So
They're doing great.
after that boat, after your CO tour, where are you going to go for life after being commanding officer?
So then I got I went up to Norfolk, back to Norfolk, and I worked for Submarine Forces Atlantic, and I was the senior inspector for what's called the Tactical Readiness Exam.
Okay.
So submarines have two major inspections. One's the Operational Reactor Safeguards Exam, that's for the engine room and the reactor, and the other is the Tactical Readiness Exam, and that is war fighting capability, shooting missiles, torpedoes, da 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 da. So any of the doing ISR, all the different war sets. So I was the senior guy for the Atlantic Fleet. So I did all the inspections on the Atlantic, both boomers and fast attacks. Every submarine out there for 2 years. I forgot how many inspections I did, but pretty much one a month. That was pretty much the routine. So about a week-long inspection, scenario-driven.
Yeah.
A lot of time off the coast of Florida and AUTEC shooting torpedoes.
Yeah.
Yep.
What I loved about my time as an inspector was I got the chance to go on a bunch of different boats, see a bunch of different crews, get a bunch of different. I used to tell people I'd go on any surface ship, and you let me see a general quarters damage control training brief, you let me see a DCPO training and a zone inspection, and I will tell you the culture of that ship. I just needed those three indicators, and I felt comfortable that I could go tell that captain, sir, here's where I think your crew is probably good, and here's where you probably got some areas to be careful of, right? Because I had that level of experience. So when I got to my aircraft carrier, and I was the carrier guy for my time, when I got to George Washington, man, I remember my XO and my Chang, my chief engineer was like, oh my God, this guy has all the cheat codes, because I did. I had all this experience from all these. I knew the standard for the fleet, really.
Yeah.
I really knew the standard, not what somebody was telling me. I know I'd been there. I'd seen all the boats. I was the guy assessing them all. And of course, inspectors hated me because they came out to see me. I knew this, but I also knew it was our job is to get inspected. Your job is to inspect me. You're going to do your job. It's okay.
Yep.
Right. But it definitely made me more powerful as a leader on the waterfront because I had that credibility. Did you find after you finished that tour, when you got to your next afloat command, that you brought all that experience with you and that seasoning?
Yeah, I mean, it was very helpful because after that, I went to the submarine squadron and was the deputy and the commodore. So, and that was we had four boats assigned to that squadron. But being the fact that I had seen, and I agree with you, and I didn't believe it at first, but excuse me, but you did learn when you went down the hatch for the first time, you could almost smell the grade, got to be weird about that.
Yeah.
And so it did help me integrate when I went to be the commodore in charge of four boats, that's something in my throat now. To give them a heads up on, hey, watch this, watch that, because you've seen so many crews.
Yeah. No, I can see the brilliance of them picking you to be the guy to go to the Submarine Squadron 15 to be the deputy, because, hey, look, not only did you have a good command tour, XO tour, not only did you get all this diversity of stink on you as you go up the chain from sub-pack to sub-land to the joint force and seeing all those different things, because Guam, like we know, and for those of you in the world that don't know, Guam is a joint island. It's not just a Navy island. It's an American island. It is an island for the people, but it's also a very important strategic location for the entire joint force, right? Yeah. And so when you go to that island, not only do you need to understand your branch, but also how do you correlate, how do you synergize with everybody else. And then, oh, by the way, Submarine Squadron 15 they have four boats, but they also get control of a lot of other boats that are passing through and are involved in that whole, and in that very important waterway, if you will, of strategic navigation, right? Especially in between, especially working with Yokosuka, right? And how that works. Because you guys are really, how I understood, the care, the feeding, the housing, the maintenance, all those other things, and then supported them. Were you excited to go to Guam when you first got told you were going to Guam?
Yeah, I chose. If you kind of go over the career that we just talked about, was my only time in the Pacific was that Submarine Forces Pacific when I went to college every night. So I really didn't learn the Pacific. So I was like, hey, to round out my tour or my career, I want to go to the Pacific and see what it's like and feel it. And then so yeah, I requested to go to. I knew I was going to go to Major Command, my 06 command. But I said, hey, let me go. Can the position for Squadron 15 deputy came open, and I said, I'll try that, and let me see what the Pacific is like. I had already put in my request for major command locations, my wish list, as we call it, but they were on the East Coast. But once I got to Guam and as the deputy, I asked hey, can I swap, and can I make Squadron 15 my number one choice? And they allowed it, and they picked me. So I went I fleeted up, as you call it, from the deputy to the Commodore, which that doesn't normally happen, but it happened for me, and started my life in Guam right then, 2013.
So when you made that choice to go from the deputy to the Commodore, was that purely was that just, oh my God, I see the vision for this job, but I'm not done yet, and I want to see this through? Or was that where you already started recognizing, like, hey, at some point this journey is going to end, and I kind of like this beautiful island called Guam, and I'm looking around me like, this gives me everything I want out of life. And because I got to be honest, at some point, the Navy tells you you got to go home. You don't get to stay there until you're no longer physically able to do the job, theoretically, because some of us might still be doing it till we're 60 if they let us. But they tell us that you're going to go home by the time you're 50, 55, or you get cursed with being on staff duty for life. And not everybody maybe wants that job, right? I know I don't. I did not.
Yeah.
And so I think once I woke up one day and I was like, you know what? They're going to tell me to go home in the next 10 years anyway. Why don't I just start making choices for myself? Then it got to be hard to focus a little bit, because that was a new way to think, right? Like,
Now the come to fleet up was purely what you said that initially was I saw what the submarines were doing in the Pacific and said, this is the mission, this is where I want to round out. So it was more about the mission than it was about Guam. Guam came after when I got back here as Commodore, and then family my family choices said, nah, Guam's were, because when I was finishing up Squadron 15, I was on my way. I had been penciled in to go to CTF's Commander Task Force 74 in Yokosuka. That's where I was supposed to go. And I asked, by that time, this was where I started making my career and family choices to stay in Guam.
I could see 74, but I could also understand why you made the choices that you made. But let me reel that back real quick though, because I know how operational it is out there in the Pacific, and I know once you get a taste for the Pacific and what's really going on. And God, I can only imagine what it's like now. I mean, I remember the first Trump tour, right? And I remember the Obama years and just being like, what the hell are we doing? Watching these guys build things in the middle of the ocean. And I was afloat on a ship. We got in trouble because we drove by Fiery Reef one time, and me and the captain was like, Master Chief, let's fly our battle in. So we threw our biggest flag. We got in trouble. He said, Master Chief, maybe we didn't have to fly the biggest flag we got. And I was like, sir, screw it. America, but whatever. Right? What are you going to do? But now I'm sure it's freaking like, hey, man, chests are out a little bigger, shoulders back a little stronger. And everybody's saying, okay, everyone respects strength. Everyone respects strength. But if you're not going to give us strength, we'll take advantage of it. Why not? I don't judge people for doing that either. Hey, the enemy gets a vote, man. And so I can see, when looking back at that timeline of those years of when that synergy's happening in the Pacific, and that's right about the time you became the Squadron 15 Commodore, and there was a lot of things going our direction in the Pacific, and it wasn't exciting. Just like I was there when we were bringing that 5th submarine over for Naval Base Guam, and that was a big deal, right?
Yeah.
I remember watching it all finish up here, and how the barracks all played out and remembering how we had to put that plan together to make all that work. And people that weren't there when we were there, well, they'll never know how much thought we put into all that, but we really did. Okay, so you go to Submarine Squadron 15, and I'll tell you, for those of you that don't know, yes, Yokosuka, Japan, yes, Sasebo, Japan has some forward deployed ships, but I would put pound for pound, day for day, sea pay to sea pay, that those submarines out of Guam are check raising those boats out of Japan when it comes to underway days, when it comes to underway rotation days, and no one talks about it, right? I don't hear anyone talking about it. I don't hear anybody talking about it. And of course, I'm frustrated for the surface guys up there in Yokosuka because after Fitz and McCain, it was like they're underway so freaking much that complacency has got to be violently fought against every day. Otherwise, you're going to unfortunately get into a position where you're going to be unsafe. But when you drive your car an excessive amount of miles every day, and unfortunately, you're going to become complacent. And it's scary. And I look at these, everyone's exhausted, everyone's tired. I know they're tired on the boats down there too. And it doesn't seem like I hope they're getting the recognition that they deserve, at least for the hours they're putting in and for the work they're putting in, and that someone's telling them they love them, because it's hard. The good news though is the families, for the most part, really like those locations, right? So like the families really like Guam, they really like Sasebo, they really like Yokosuka. So yes, while we're exhausted from doing the job, at least when you come home, for the most part, the families are not too pissed off, right? In the States where it's different, and I'm not taking anything away from Guam because Guam is America, but everyone's kind of all focused on the mission. We're all kind of in this community that's all very connected. Whereas in the States, your next door neighbor could be some civilian that has no connection to what you're going through as a person, and they can't relate. You don't have that support system of this ombudsman group and all these families, which I think makes the next period of time we're going to talk about for us even more unique, because we got the chance to do COVID together in Guam. And I tell people all the time,
I don't know if it's a chance. I don't know if it was an opportunity or a chance or punishment, but yeah, we did COVID.
I thought it was a blessing.
I wrote the book, Gary. We wrote the book.
You wrote the book. I've been looking for that book, by the way. I've been looking for that damn book.
Oh, really? I'll probably have it somewhere.
I know. That's a good book. We got to publish that sucker. There's more to that book. But, I think so. Before we get to COVID, so you're finishing up Submarine Squadron 15, Major Command. You got 4 submarine COs working for you. You got 4 boats you're taking care of. And are you and Renate already dating at this time? Or
that was it. When I came back, because I had it between deputy or Commodore, I actually had to go off to Groton and go to school, then come back. So I actually left and came back. And that's when I met Renate. And that's kind of how the decision to stay in Guam, not leave after Squadron 15 came about. Yep.
Okay. And that was when you got the opportunity to go be the installation commanding officer for Naval Base Guam.
I had one step in between. If you remember, I was the chief of staff for the Joint Region Marianas.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I do remember that.
So I did that for 2 years.
That's right.
And then got fortunate enough to get a second 06 Major Command and went to Naval Base Guam CO.
What an awesome career, man. Like, holy crap, dude. Like, you freaking are amazing. So you went from being the Submarine Squadron 15 Commodore, understanding all that, taking all your years of experience to Joint Region Marianas, right? And to helping thread together what that place was becoming.
Yeah.
Right? What it was growing from Commander Naval Region Marianas to Joint Region Marianas.
Yeah.
Right? Were you there as that transition happened?
No, it already happened for several years. But what we were focused on is the thing that is current is the stand up of Marine Corps Base Camp Blas. So that hadn't happened yet, and that was the major transition going on. Was the start of the Marine relocation and all the construction, and actually, which just a couple years ago resulted in the stand-up of the Marine Corps Base Camp Blas here in Guam.
Okay.
So
And
that was
then,
what I'm reaching.
but I mean, you get all of that experience and understanding the politics of all the different islands, because again, all these islands are American territories. They're part of the fabric of our United States of America, or they are at least pledging allegiance to us for protection and or trade treaties, whatever. I remember my mom flew out for a visit to Guam, and she went on the wrong airline. She took the one that hit all the islands all the way out to
Oh
Guam.
no.
And I was like, United hits them all, baby.
Yeah.
It's like riding the subway of the skies, right? She hit them all. And that's the amount of, those are all Americans that are working their way to and from Hawaii or from wherever,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all across the islands, right?
Yep.
Micronesia, they're all across all across the Mariana Trench, all that. Okay, so you did Marianas, and then you got the chance to come to Naval Base Guam,
Yep.
back in command, because you were chief of staff there up at the region. So you're working for the admiral, but you're managing herding all the cats, right? Working with the
Yep.
civilians. Because was that your first staff duty where you had a bunch of civilians to work with?
It was. Yeah. Mainly civilians, very few military. So that was my first. So when you say staff, that was really my first staff duty, right?
Right.
That was it.
For me, Guam was my only time with civilians on staff too. When I was in Seventh Fleet, it was 100% military.
Besides Millington, right? Millington was staff.
Yeah.
Different. It was all military staff. It was still a lot of military. This was JRM was mainly civilians.
Well, and I remember, you and the outgoing CEO of MBG, you guys just swapped roles. Actually, he went to Mariana, so you went down to MBG. Because look, let's be honest, there's probably not a whole bunch of post-tour major commanders looking to go out to Guam to serve their country. They don't know what they're missing, right? I can film the commercial for them, right? But they don't know what they're missing. And I saw like the current Master Chief for Naval Base Guam. He was the base hospital master chief. Now he's going back to Naval Hospital Guam. Like, whatever. Enjoy it. Have fun. Whatever. So when you got to MBG, did you already knew what your priorities were going into that role? Because you came down from Marianas. Did you already know the things that you wanted to focus on? Like, you had your four corners, right? You had the compass that you had figured out, and you had your priorities laid out, and safety and security. And did you already have all that figured out, or did you come to all that after you got to MBG and actually got to see it from the inside?
I think I had the pieces of it in my head, right? But I never put it together. I mean, because I operated as a tenant, as Squadron 15, then as the chief of staff, looking down at all the different tenants. So when I got there, I formulated it there. That's where we came up with it. I said, hey, there's the motto was crossroads to the Pacific, and it didn't sit with me because we're not a pass through. This was right. That's what it meant. That's what crossroad, even though it's a huge logistics hub and stuff. But the environment changed, right? We were, and I've said it a couple times, you're now in the weapons engagement zone of the enemy. So that's what changed my fault thing. Really started that I thought, and hey, we got to change this because it's not. Is this a main operating base or are we a forward operating base? Those discussions, how to balance that piece out from the installation level to make sure I can support the people who had to get out there and get in that fight.
Well, so and I think not everybody understood always how real it was.
Yeah.
Outside the wire, right? Outside the gates.
Yeah.
They just didn't understand the threat. They didn't understand the amount of people that were on the island, and not everybody had our best interests at heart. And oh, by the way, we were the first touch point to collect data on our country every day. I remember you telling it to me. I remember me telling it to the sailors. Whenever you stand that post as a sentry, you want them to think that's America right there, and I'm not going to try to test that sentry because you represent our whole country, right? Yeah. And then you get all these freaking tourists and all these other people, but guess what? Guam is great, but it's not that great. Like, let's be honest. Some of the people are coming there because they're interested in seeing what else they can learn and what they can know, right?
Yeah.
So, looking back on your time as Naval Base Guam CO, we were there for a year before COVID started, right? Do you remember your time before COVID? Was there anything that was significant about your tenure there where you were like, oh my God, that was the best thing that I'd done? Or was it just getting through the job, slugging away? Because I got to tell you, when I first got there, I was just kind of like, well, it'll be all right. It's beautiful weather. I love the beaches. We'll figure it out. Me and Erica were coming off of surgery, and so we weren't really sure what life was going to be like. But once COVID came, man, it got fun real quick.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, life before COVID is kind of hard to remember, to be honest. I mean, we were focused. We changed the mission. We changed the patch. We were doing those things.
Yep.
But it was when you have something like that operation that we carried out in the midst of the whole publicity of it all. It kind of goes. It's hard to remember, right? Because it was so focused. I mean, that was a lot of hours, a lot of work, a lot of great things we did. And
it happened so quick too. Like
it did.
I remember when the Theodore Roosevelt pulled in the first time, and going downtown to the downtown hotel to have a function, right? And I knew Captain Crozier from a previous tour, so him and I still am connected to him to this day, right? I think he's doing great things, and I remember going there and drinking and hanging out with him and my wife Erica, and the CMC was there, Pete Santos was there, and a whole bunch of people were there, and I had no clue that after that event in that hotel, that weeks later, all hell was about to be breaking loose in our world, right? Yeah. Because I don't even think at that point we were even talking about a COVID flu or worried about getting a COVID flu of some sort. It wasn't even on my radar at that point, And then I don't know. When do you remember COVID as an installation, force protection, medical health condition? God, all those terms we were using back then. Are you right? Because as the installation person yourself, and then the region person, you were responsible for force protection, health protection, right? Was that? Yeah. How was that worded? It was. There was a word. You had a responsibility for the greater humanity or whatever it was for medical health readiness or community. It gave you all these different things. I just remember having a meeting at TNT, right? We're at TNT's, right? All the commanding officers are there. All the XOs are there. All the CMCs are there. We're at TNT's, and we're like, all right, guys, look, if this flu gets here or this COVID thing or whatever it's going to be, we don't really even know, but if it comes to Guam, here's are going to be our response actions at baseline level, like immediate response. And it was like if you had one, because we had only like 18 beds on the island. I remember at one point was all we had that we thought we had. And I remember thinking one was going to make us immediately trip a wire. And then it was like, God, it was like, the next day.
Yeah, like it seemed like it. It wasn't, but it seemed like it. And then it was the next year. It felt like.
But like the next day. So we had that meeting at TNT's, and it's like that Saturday or Sunday you called me up, and you're like, Gary, we just had a COVID positive. And it was like we had like 3 like the first day. And we 300% jumped over our red line. And I remember sitting on my driveway, looking up at the stars, and we're all gonna die.
Yeah, it was a lot of unknowns. A lot of unknowns. We were living in the unknown.
Remember that? Like I just remember thinking, like, oh my God, we're all gonna die. We don't have the medical facilities. We don't have the support. Yeah. We were supposed to be hideaway here in this little island, and now all of a sudden we're gonna be overwhelmed in a week because we didn't know, right?
We didn't know.
And that first part was so quiet. Do you remember? Oh, I remember another fun time. You were on travel to Hawaii, I think it was. And I think this was before, right after the first positives had started, or something.
It was after. It was the next. We thought there was a chance. It was an amphib possibly coming. Germantown. Yeah, it was Germantown. I was in Hilo doing an emergency manager's course.
Yeah.
Which is typically about typhoons and stuff like that. We ended up being pandemic.
Yeah.
And I got the call that night, and I'm at dinner with my wife, and I was with Phil Santos, who just happened to be there, that you mentioned earlier. And I ended up on the phone with you all night.
Because
and then I immediately came back, and we thought it was Germantown, and then it didn't happen. They didn't show up, and then a week later is when
they started spinning us up for the TR. I remember Germantown and Kahuna. Was that Kahuna was covering in for you as the CO for the base? Kahuna was, and it was like we were all of a sudden we had to put Germantown in a box, and they couldn't leave the box. They were like on Sandbox Liberty all of a sudden, and it was this whole big debacle. They couldn't throw their trash away. It was all kinds of stuff, right? And I knew these guys from my past life when I was in Sasebo, and I was I remember talking on the pier, like across the way from the CMC, and just be like, I don't even know what this means, man. Like, okay, well, I hope you guys aren't sick, bro. Like, because we thought they might have it, and that was the concern, right? And that was before we even got to this whole. You had to do this period of time before you could be considered clean, or okay,
that was a
fun one. You wrote a book. There is a book. It gave us guidance. I remember. Man, I'm trying to think about. So when that first happened, you got back, and I think we didn't understand how we were going to be leveraged yet as a forward operating in base, right? And how real that word was about to become, right? I think that people always kind of took that narrative with a grain of salt, but we became the only Liberty port available, the only logistical port available for all those ships in our theater, period. Nobody was doing it like Guam. Nobody. Right? Because if you pulled those ships into Yokosuka, Sasebo, they wanted to go home. Right? They were that family across the wire. You brought them to Guam, there wasn't family there, right? Because that was like almost twice as much pain. Even though our submariners were getting put into those freaking bubbles and they couldn't go home before they got that was happening. I'm trying to remember. So I remember the news story breaking that the TR was heading back from Vietnam and they had some COVID positives on the ship. And there was all the different ideas about what could happen. And then, do you remember what you thought when they first told you that they were going to bring the Theodore Roosevelt to Guam? Do you remember? Was that Manoni that told you that?
Admiral Manoni called me and then, hey, we need to get a couple hundred beds, right? I said, okay, we'll make that happen. And that's when I called you in and go, you need to get a couple hundred beds for us. And you and the chief set off to do it. And then, and so, I figured, okay, a couple hundred, and then they'll figure it out and go. And then, if you remember, I think it was less than 24 hours later, or at least not much. How about 2,400?
Yes. It was not even a day.
Then that's when it got real. How do we convert every piece of, real estate that we can to meet the health standards required for mass housing of up to 2,400 people? And that's when it got real. And I still don't know how we pulled that off.
I remember Colonel Sanger. Was that her name? Colonel Sangster.
Yep.
She was the public health officer down there, the veterinarian who also was like, she was like, I'm a veterinarian, but at night I'm Dexter. I'm a freaking public health weenie. Like she knows it all. And you know what's funny is I actually talked to her not too long ago because one of my students wants to become an Army veterinarian. So I connected her with Colonel Sangster so they could talk, right? But we were getting all the guidance as to what the rules were going to be. To that point, about the 2,400 beds, when we first came up with our first swag for beds, we thought we were we thought we were digging deep then. When they came back and said multiply it by like 3 and give us 2,400, yeah. I remember I was handing out SIM cards, I think, at the elementary school to the people that were there, the elementary school laydown area, because they were considered to be yellows or whatever. We weren't sure what they were yet.
Yeah, now.
When you called, and I'd ask you, could I go home and have dinner? Because I had had dinner with my family for like weeks, it felt like at that point. And you were like, Mash, I need you to come back to the office.
Yeah. I slept in my office and then to get in my house, I don't know about your wife, but I had to like take off my uniform, but no one knew. Take off my uniform, shower outside, decompose, what do you call it?
Decon.
Decon myself.
Well, everybody else was freaking doing home watching Tiger King. We were out moving around COVID positives.
We were around them all night. We had movements going. Yeah. And it wasn't, man, you look at the number of people who participated in that. You talk Jody Sangster for one, but the CTF guys, all of your chiefs.
Yeah.
It was civilians, huge. Wild Bill. Wow.
It was huge. And I will tell you, I was very proud of the Chiefs mess coming out of that, because that first part was so hard, so big that, and 7th Fleet telling everybody to giving them the, hey, you work with MBG, do whatever they needed them to do. But as soon as that happened, bam, we had everybody, and the Chiefs came to work, and that was awesome.
Stood up the EOC, and we had a 24-hour watch station. I mean, wow.
For like a year. A year. People don't understand. Like, we were fighting that fight for the whole time. The
70-something days of Teddy Roosevelt was just the first 70-something days. After that, we had the whole base set up.
Well, and we were running Sandbox Liberty, right? We were running Bubble to Bubble. We were running all the ports. We were keeping the fleet moving, so that way we took a problem off of somebody else's plate for sure, right? Because all they said was bring them into Guam, and they would get there. We had Navy Exchange was putting all the stuff in the different storage facilities and making sure it was all clean to go.
Yeah, the community bringing food. We had so much food donated to these sailors. It was amazing. I mean, it was just great.
It really was.
We did multinational. Don't forget the French ship and the German ship. It wasn't just U.S. Nope. It's allies and partners. So pretty amazing.
And I'll tell you, and then for the island also supported, right? Remember, you guys contracted that restaurant to come in and start making all the food. Kings. Because we couldn't produce the food because we don't have a galley.
Yeah. We got out of food capacity, and then we had to figure out how to keep the food fresh and within health standards for that. That wasn't easy because you had to drive it.
Do you know what's so funny about the whole?
We ended up having about 15 different locations.
Yeah. You know what's funny is before COVID hit, I remember you and I talking about what we would do if there was ever an attack on the island because we didn't have a galley. We didn't have these things, and we were kind of just spitballing it, just like what if in it, and then all that came to play 7 months later as we were just trying to get creative with how we could leverage every asset, every resource on the island to best to support the war fight. Because look, that's how Guam is going to always have to be. Right? Guam will never have the luxury to not be everybody all the way invested in the fight to keep the fight going to defend the island. Right?
It's people from Georgia are not going to drive to Guam to help us out. You're on your own.
And look, if there was a problem at Jacksonville Naval Air Station, people on Western Florida are not going to drive there to go help. Right? Yeah. But on Guam, there's only so much of what everyone has, period. And so the government and the military organizational leadership has got to work together for everyone. And then unfortunately, they got to all fall in line probably with the military, because in order for us all to survive, we got to keep the island alive and safe and stable. And that's a tough place to operate from, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved it, man. Looking back on it, that was some of the most fun I've ever had in my life. Like, going through it was hell, right? But looking back on it, I remember when it was like a ghost town in NBG headquarters, and it was just military, and being like, man, I feel like we're underway. This is great. I like it. I'm gonna walk down to the EOC.
Yeah.
Because I remember, I forget when it was. You told me once, and you're like, Master Chief, you're too close to the problem. You need to come back to the building. Stop. Because I was out there, man. I was in.
Yeah, sometimes we were out. I mean, you want to get in close and feel the ground, but sometimes you got to take a step back and keep that big picture, because there's a lot moving.
And at the first part, we didn't have any people, right? Like, people don't understand how small our military staff was at NBG, especially when the security forces were all in a whole different thing, because they had to be bubbled up to protect the base for force protection, right? It got real lean real quick. So, you know, everyone was having to pitch in, you know, we were all out there doing what we could do. Later, we got more, you know, we got more bodies, and we got built up a little bit more. And then, you remember they brought in all the medical people,
all the medical pieces.
Okinawa. That was a huge plus up.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
they brought a lot to the fight.
They did. And you know, all those buildings that we put them in for those makeshift hospitals, they're all gone now. They're all torn down.
Really?
It just shows you what we did to.
Oh, those those
portables, to get them back in shape with our engineers, to even be able to put a person in them. Not only a person, but healthy, because it was end up being hospital clean. Like,
do you remember when we had to move all the people out of the barracks because we were going to put people in barracks? We emptied that whole big building of barracks. Even people that were deployed, unfortunately, we had to figure out a way to get it done. And I remember us coming up with that plan. Like, that was like break glass only when needed, and we broke the hell out of that. we broke that glass twice.
Yeah.
We broke that glass. All of our vacant family housing, we were leveraging that for just stowing people in that were streaming to the island to help us. We had nowhere for them to stay, because all of our Navy Lodge rooms, which NGIS was all getting used for freaking Apra Palms. Oh my, Apra Palms would be one of my favorite ones. The night we had made everyone evacuate Apra Palms and go to Camp Covington. And, you know, again, not everyone needs to always know our behind the scenes thinking, but we were able to also work our battle plans with our other long-term plans for Naval Base Guam, because we had a vision of getting all of that CTF warfighters on Camp Covington and out of APRA. And I remember I was walking through APRA Palms, and people were just like, "Come on, Gary." I was like, "No, get your butt on the bus." It was something, man. I'm very proud to have been a part of that. You had to have been there. You know.
Yeah. For everybody watching this, are going, "Wow, what are they talking about?" Yeah, you had to be there. It was that awesome.
Well, because all those rooms, all those beds were laid on areas for sailors that were going to be vacating off of that ship. And then what started happening was we had all these houses that were like hotel rooms that we use in Guam, but now Pac Fleet was expecting us to use all those beds for people coming to Guam to get healthy, to go to ships, to meet their deploying units, right? And so we became this concierge service that would pick you up at the airport, drive you to your place, have food for you delivered by your freaking Navy Exchange app or whatever it was, right? We'd keep you healthy, whole, and certified, bubble safe, and then we'd drive you and drop you off to your boat. And we had drivers, we had vans, we had EOC, we had SOPs.
Yep. I mean, the airport thing was crazy, right? I mean, we were up at the airport.
I remember when I remember when the airport, every night we had watchstanders at the airport picking up people and managing that whole process, right? We had a chief every night at the airport managing that process. And, we had to do this not only for the region and for the area, for the NBG and for the island, but also so that the commanders of our Navy could defend who they were letting go on the ship, because again, they had to all follow the rules of the federal government, right? The federal government rules, we're all federal government employees. These are the rules of the federal government. And Guam was, we followed the rules all the way till the bitter end. Whereas other states chose to say, screw it, we're not doing that no more. We watched that from the sidelines, because on Guam, that wasn't an option. Right? It was not optional. But hey, looking back at it though, my family, I think they had a pretty decent time. They were in APRA up there on the hill, and Dad wasn't around a whole lot, but God, there's a lot of people over here that lost a lot of family members.
Nah, it was real.
And some of the science is coming out of the whole thing. I think we learned a lot of lessons about going through a pandemic. Tell you what. Brother, I'm glad it was you and not anybody else, so I'll tell you that much.
I'm glad you were with me, man, because it was wow. Yeah, I'll always look back at that as many key things in my life has happened, but that one there is we'll never. That was the teamwork, because it definitely wasn't me. This was huge amount of people. You mentioned government, you name it, that all came together, and and we were very lucky. We only lost a very few. Very
lucky. I think, very lucky.
Very lucky. And a lot of it was because of all the stuff we did, which was probably overly conservative. But at that point, we didn't know. And to save a life, it was worth it.
It was worth it, and here's the other thing, because of how you are, because of how I am, I'm a good sailor. So once you tell me this is mission essential, all right, sir, roger that. Here we go. And that's it, right? And I had some of my opinions on some nights, right? I'd call up a Master Chief here and there and be like, what the hell are we doing? Like off island in particular. I made a few phone calls and I was like, you're asking us to do things that I'm not fully freaking comfortable with. And I'm going to do it to the best of my ability, but don't be mad at me tomorrow if there's a picture that doesn't look exactly like a freaking Hilton, because it's not. It's not. It's a freaking cafeteria of an elementary school, bro. It's a cafeteria of a high school. I remember that time I remember you said, Master Chief, there's got to be a bed in every room. I was putting a bed in laundry rooms. I didn't.
No, we did.
It was that many people. Until it all got
6 feet apart, with enough restrooms, all the requirements, you can fit a lot of people and be safe about it. We did it. Everything was inspected.
So when they stood up the hotels, right, and Submarine Squadron 15 went and took on the hotels down there, and you had sailors delivering meals to all the hotel rooms with all these, it was all hands on freaking deck on Guam. It really was. And I think I remember trying to unwind that. One of the only areas I've got a sour taste in my mouth was the hardest part about any mission plan, any war plan. It's not about how you start the war; it's how you finish the war, right? I mean, we all know that, right? Anything you do in life that's worth doing, start with the end in mind first. Have the end in mind first, and if you've got to build the plane while you're flying the plane, start thinking about how you're going to land that sucker at some point, because it's going to land, right? At some point, the flight's going to be over. And I remember us having so many obligations and so many responsibilities that we were being held accountable to. And then all of a sudden, one day, everyone is like, oh, we're all going. We're all leaving by. And we were just left but none of these obligations have left. None of these responsibilities are gone, right? And I look at it, I remember our Navy before 9/11. I was a young sailor. I don't remember a whole bunch, but I remember a lot. And then a lot of these changes that came after 9/11, especially on the heels of force protection. And the problem is, you didn't plus us up to man up all these unfunded billets to achieve all these requirements. I had Lisa Tisdale on here not too long ago. We were having a conversation about it, and she was the Joint Region Master Chief during COVID for Benoni, and I told her, I said, the thing I hate the most about personnel in the Navy is when they tell me billets are unfunded, because all I'm hearing you tell me is I need more people, and you're not going to get them for me, and but you're not lowering any of these requirements that I got to achieve. That doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah.
I think we grew a lot of requirements after 9/11, and then we've never taken any of those back, and so they're on the backs of the sailors that are manned still at older manned configurations. Well, now you look at those installations, or like Naval Base Guam, you were asking us to do all these mission sets that were not in our not a part of our manning documents, but we didn't have the resources of the people. And I was a little bit sour there, because these were friends of ours that I was going home to every day. They were with us all the way to the end. I remember Rick Straney called me up one night. He was a CTF 75 CMC. He was like, Gary, man, you got to understand, at some point we got to go back to our jobs. I was like, I get it, man. I get it. But this is still my job, right? This is still my job, and no one's telling me that I can just stop doing it. That was a tough one for me that was a tough pill for me to swallow. So anyone out there listening to our voice, just remember, if you're going to go in, great. Just have a plan to get the hell out, and get the hell out on your own terms, right? And before you start cutting resources, just have a good plan to get out. Don't just leave everything there and walk away. That's not good. And then I think the other hard part was after you left command, I'm not gonna lie, I was so upset at that command. I was so lonely there. It was not fun. But then it was just waiting to retire, right? It was just waiting to retire. So when you turned over command, you immediately retired after that, right? I mean, you did a little bit back on the hill, but then you retired. And then since retiring, how's life, man? Are you just drinking margaritas on the beach?
Yeah, now I'm working. I worked commercial industry for a couple of years, and then I'm currently working as the executive director up at Anderson Air Force Base. So the pull back to this military, way of life, and the mission, like you said, even though we got a lot of unfundeds and challenges, it's still important to me, and so I'm doing the job.
Do they still have unfunded in the Air Force?
And I'm finding that the way the Air Force fights isn't the way the Navy fights, but it's still important in the whole strategic gambit of what's going on here in the Pacific. So I'm enjoying it.
Man, when I first heard you got that position, I was super proud of you, because number one, they couldn't have asked for a better guy with better background, better understanding, better perspective. But then just when I think about some of the people that I felt like didn't want to see your success in certain areas, God, I was like, I really was, man, because I am a Captain Jeff Grimes fan. Like, I will fight you over Captain Jeff Grimes. I remember, I don't know if I ever told you this, but my very first day as NBG CMC, and we really didn't know each other very well at this time, but I'm in my office. I don't even know what I'm doing, right? Ballard had just left, and this guy comes in my door and closes my door and just starts yelling at me about my captain, right? And he was one of the CBs at the self-help place, right? And I'm like, I don't know who this guy is. He's a chief, and he's wearing a cookie, and he's yelling, rah, 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 and I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, once he gets done yelling, like, where do they do that at? Like, where are we right now where you think you're going to come in my office and start yelling about my commanding officer? What the hell are we doing? And that was my first day, right? But I mean, I love you to death, man. I think you're a freak. You are awesome, and I've been there. And I know your heart, but I also know that you're a warrior, and warriors don't always. Not everyone's going to like us. It's okay. It's okay.
No.
But
I think everything, as I've learned through my life, the people, whatever happens for a reason. And you and me got together with Steve right at the right time, and all the things that happened, and it was right. It was right. I mean, that's all
it was great. I'm gonna get Kahuna on here too at some point, because I think he was an important piece of that pie too. Him
Imagine
and
if
Wilbur.
he wasn't there.
Yeah. If he hadn't been there at the beginning, God, who? Because his level of preparation and his ability was just,
Yep.
he was way up here, man.
He had
Operation.
the command center, man. He ran that
He
EOC, and
did.
the rest of he stood that up. I mean, that way
I remember,
we all had a lot to
remember,
do. We split up our requirements and we executed. It was mission command. That's what that's called. Here's the mission. I don't know how to do this. Here's what we got to do. Here's your mission.
Yep.
Go do it. Be ethical, be legal, be moral, and execute.
Yep.
That's all. That was the order. I mean,
that was it.
Sometimes those are the best orders to give. And let good people who know their stuff get stuff done. And you guys did it. I mean, you guys nailed it.
Yeah. I remember one time we were, I was on George Washington, and we had just pulled into Hong Kong, and we had got the call that night to recall the entire crew, the entire air wing, because we were getting sortied to go to the Philippines in support of a humanitarian mission, right? And I remember thinking that this is impossible or whatever, but all the rules were off. They're like, get it done. I love those opportunities. You know what? Trust me. Thank you. I got you. Right? Don't give me all this bureaucratic crap. Tell me the mission. Give me the parameters. Legal, ethical, and moral. Go. And then great things happen.
Message to Garcia.
Yep. Message to Garcia. Oh my God. We got to cover that one in a future story. Okay. I got one last thing to do, man, before I let you go. All right. This is my quick, fast, in a hurry. I ask you questions and you just try to answer them as fast as you can. Okay? And then we're done.
Dangerous.
No, it's fun. Okay. So, on the submarine, it's Friday, Saturday night. Would you rather have pizza or wings?
Pizza.
Pizza, okay. You're a young division officer or you're a young officer or wherever you're at in your life. Would you rather have worked in the berthing cleaners or on the working party?
The working party.
Okay. I'm not surprised to hear you say that. Okay. Out of these gentlemen are both actors. Would you prefer to watch Robert De Niro or Al Pacino in a movie?
Al Pacino.
Okay. So throughout I think I know what you're going to say, but throughout your career, what was your favorite duty station?
Guam.
I knew it. Yep. Okay. Out of your career, what was your best Liberty port?
Naples, Italy.
Okay. I thought you were going to say Guam again. I'm not going to lie.
No, not Liberty here. I live here.
Naples, Italy. Okay. Throughout your career, what was your hardest watch qualification that you ever had to earn?
Engineering officer of the watch. The culmination of my first tour.
I believe that. All right. I think I know the answer here, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If you were on a boat again, would you rather be overseas or stateside?
Overseas.
Yeah, definitely. It's just simpler, I think. Okay. Would you rather be independent or on a team?
On a team.
Okay. Personal leadership philosophy. Do you think, is it fighting from, fighting for, or do you have another leadership philosophy that is personal? Do you think it's the one where you keep your standard above your bosses?
That's more of a work ethic.
Okay.
I think I'll take one back I'll give you another one. I don't think I've ever told you this one, but it's more of I don't know, leadership philosophy. It's about the team.
Okay.
That's really what is
about
the thing.
The team?
It's not about the leader. It's always about the team.
It's about
the team. The Tim Tebow, as a recent boss of mine used to say, that's the Tim Tebow effect, right? And how he never talked about himself, because it's true.
Okay. Yep. All right. So in the Chiefs mess, we have a few of these guiding principles. We have deck plate leadership. We have institutional and technical expertise. We've got professionalism, character, loyalty, active communication, or a sense of heritage. If I asked you to pick out of that listing, which one of those you thought resonated the most with you, which one do you think it would be? You want me to say them again?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the first one is deck plate leadership. The next one is institutional and technical expertise, professionalism, character, loyalty, active communication, or a sense of heritage?
I would say character probably overall, although it's very hard to separate those from each one individually. They're all so important.
They are, definitely, yeah. Okay, would you rather lead or follow?
Lead.
Me too. I'd rather be on a team, but I'd also rather lead the team.
Yeah.
You know, I tell my students, I say, but there's nothing more satisfying than when you know you're leading a team of leaders and they're all choosing to follow you.
Yeah.
That right there, it gets no better than that, right? It gets that's it. All right, man, Jeff.
Yep.
Saved rounds. Do you have any saved rounds or alibis before closing?
No, appreciate it. Great reconnecting with you. Just reminiscing, but also hopefully meeting the words from the wise as we're here today.
Hey, man, and for those that are listening, Jeff is also on my advisory board, so I owe you an update on how things are going. It is going good, right? It is going good. I'm hosting a live leadership development event here in Ocala on July 25th called Ocala Inspired. So that's one of my initiatives I'm currently doing. It's going to be a good time. So Wise Leadership Solutions is still growing and booming, and we're getting busy. I've got, I believe, one of my former commanding officers coming down here to be one of my fellow instructors. I'm hoping to lasso him in a little bit to help me out with this. It's fun. So, all right. Well, hey, give my love to the family, man. Tell everybody on Guam we said half a day. And thank you very much I'm sorry to go long, brother.
No problem. Have a great one. Talk to you soon.
Right, you guys have a good day. Bye-bye. Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And I know I was born for this. I know I was born for this. Don't care for the critics, my words are like physics, a force that they can't stop. They just don't get it, I think they forget I'm not done till I'm on top. I know I was born for this. I know